This is the Spur Leadership Podcast, number 21. 4 consecutive appearances in the NCAA college football playoffs, 6 conference championships on the way to 2 national championships, the winningest college football program over the last 10 years. When Dabo Swinney was named interim head football coach at Clemson University, he was the wide receivers coach, assistant head coach, and recruiting coordinator. His infectious attitude and enthusiasm can sometimes camouflage a passionate commitment to detail and doing the little things right every day. Recently, Mike Ward and I had the opportunity to sit down with Dabo at the Clemson football facility and discuss the culture that is Clemson football. Here is that conversation. You know, Dad, you've had so much success here, and I think so many people who will be watching this later on are going to go, well, yeah, national championship, Final Four. That's just kind of how it goes at Clemson now. I want to go back to 2009 when you first get the job as the head coach, but even more specifically and a little more granular. Take us back to when Coach Bowden offers to resign halfway through the season. Yeah. You're the wide receivers coach and the recruiting coordinator, right?
I was the assistant head coach and receivers coach.
What's going through your mind when you hear that?
Well, it's kind of crazy. It's interesting you start there because we're in spring practice right now, and I am going through the process with this team 125. We're on a history lesson. And the reason for that is we're starting a new decade. And we're at a whole different starting point this decade, which I'm calling the Roaring 20s, is upon us. Yeah. It's a whole different starting point this decade than where we were back in 2010 and starting that decade. And 9 was my first full season, kind of transition in there, but because I want this team to have a true, it's hard to appreciate something if you don't know the history of it. Yeah. And understand the DNA of it. And so I'm trying to get this team, because if I ask, some of these kids that just got here, they were 6 or 7 years old at that time.
Right.
And so as they've grown up, like this is the version of Clemson that they know.
This is their normal.
And you're like, well,
Clemson.
we only won 6 games in 2010. They're like, what? They can't imagine that.
Right.
But based on where we are now. But I use it, I'm doing it as a history lesson for them to know who we are, how we got here, for them to have an appreciation, but also to teach them how to have vision. Yeah. And how to have belief and real understanding. Hey, we haven't won every game, but to go back to that point, so October 13th, 2008, middle of the season, it was a disappointing year. We were preseason number 9, we're 3-3. And come to work on a Monday, and had staff meeting that morning. I actually had the devotion that morning. We kind of did a devotion. It was actually my day. I did the devotion that morning at 7 a.m. just like any other normal day. And about 10:30 that morning, we were in there. We were offensive staff prepping for the week, and door opens up. It's the operations guy, and he says, "Hey, Coach Bowden wants to see everybody in the staff room," which was very unusual. We'd already had a staff meeting. If he needed to see us, he'd just walk in the staff room, in our offensive defensive room. So just knew something was a little different, and we walk in, and he comes in, and he basically said, "Hey, look, there's going to be a change today, and I don't really have time right now to really talk to everybody individually, but I will be getting with you." And he thanked us and all this and that, and then he said, "Hey, the AD's right here, and I'll be talking to y'all soon." And he basically walks out, and the AD walks in, and it was it was an emotional moment. Everybody just in disbelief.
Sure.
And these things can happen, but when you deal with it, it's another thing. And I was 38, and I'm like, man, this is going to be. I just can't believe this is happening. I'm hurting for my players and guys I've recruited and seniors, and I'm thinking about my family and where am I going, and I'd been here 5.5 years at that point, and had turned down a couple of opportunities. Had an opportunity to go with Nick to Alabama when he first got the job, and I'd stayed at Clemson, and now we're dealing with this. But he walks in and he basically just said, hey, he kind of apologized to us and just said, This was something he and Coach Bowden felt like was the best thing to do, and challenged us to be professional and to do the best we could, to do our jobs. And then he's like, Dabo, you're now the head coach, and I need to see him. You call all the shots. Yeah. I need to see him off in 5 minutes. And
he does that in front of everyone.
In front of everybody, and then walks out. He was a man of very few words. Yeah. First of all, to know Terry Don, and closed the door, and there was like this. It seemed like 5 minutes, but it was probably only 45 seconds of just raw emotion. Yeah. People slamming notebooks, just getting their phones out. It was just kind of. It was a weird moment, and I'm just numb. I literally, my body was just numb, like unbelievable. And
you're 38 years old.
I'm 38, and I'm thinking my mindset was not good because I had been a part of one other time in my career of a fired staff where you got to kind of finish, and it was miserable. Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. But then all of a sudden the room just kind of got quiet, and everybody's looking at me, and I didn't really even know what to say. I just said, hey, look, guys, I said, let me go meet with him, and we'll figure it out from there. We'll huddle back up at some point. So I go down to his office, mm-hmm. and I'll never forget it because Mondays are long days for us. I mean, especially with Coach Bowden. We'd be in here early. We met at 7, and we didn't practice until late at night, and I just had on sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and I don't even know if I had shaved, and I ran to my office. I got a notebook, and I called my wife. Down, literally walking down the hall, and I told her what happened. I didn't want her to hear it from anybody else. I said, hey, we're going to let Coach Bowden go, and she starts crying, and I said, well, it gets worse. I'm going to be the interim.
It gets worse.
And she's like, oh God, and again, my mindset was this is fixing to be the most miserable. We had 7 weeks left because we had an open date. This is about to be a miserable 7 weeks. And so I go and I walk in his office. But that was my mentality.
Okay, yeah.
And I sit down with Terry Don, and I walk in. He goes, hey, sit down right there. So I sit down, and he goes, and I was just talking about this because I spoke at a big clinic this past weekend up in Connecticut, Saturday night, to a bunch of coaches. And this is what happened to me as a coach is exactly what happened to me as a player. And I'm glad that happened to me as a player because it taught me valuable lessons that followed me through my life. But I sit down, and he says, Dabo, he apologized. He said, I'm sorry for putting you in a tough position. I wish I could have given you a heads up, but I didn't know this was going to happen. And he tells me how it came about and so forth. And he goes, but you know what? He said, I'm really excited about this. And he said, Dabo, I want to tell you something. And I'm thinking he's going to say, hey, here's what I expect of you. And if you do a good job, maybe I'll get the next guy maybe you'll have a chance to stay with him or something. And instead he goes, I've watched you for 5.5 years. And he said, Dabo, you're ready for this job. And he goes, here's what I want from you. For the next 7 weeks, I don't want you to be the interim head coach. I want you to be the head coach. And he goes, I want whatever it is that you think you need to do to fix us, was his term. I'm going to support you. If you need to fire the whole staff, I'm going to support you. I don't care what it is. For the next 7 weeks, you're the head coach. And so, and I'm sitting there, he goes, and I've watched you for 5.5 years, how you handle your players, how you discipline players. I go out and watch practice. I gravitate and watch you coach, how you handle yourself in the community, your family, et cetera, recruiting. And he goes, you're ready for this job. And he said, in fact, I'd love to see you get this job. And he goes, but I'm gonna hire the best guy. He goes, but I would love to see you get this job. And he goes, now it'd help if you can win a few ball games. So I go into the meeting with one mindset, and now and then he just basically says, you got any questions? And I'm like, and I said, well, Mr. Phillips, I appreciate that. I said, so you're telling me I can be the head coach for 7 weeks? Like, he goes, I'm telling you, and he re-emphasized it. Whatever you think you need to do for the next, I'm going to support you. And so I walk out of the meeting empowered, and I'm like, man, I got a chance to do this I may never get. So I went to like a closet, and I just, my mind was racing, and I just started writing stuff. I mean, it was just random thoughts would pop in my head, and I'd write it, and then something that might be an unrelated topic, I'd write it over here, and I just was scribbling all over my notepad, and then I started coming back like, okay, like I'm going to do this, and then I went and met with Brad Scott, who was he was the OL coach at the time, and because I knew I was going to have to make a couple of tough decisions early if we were going to have a chance, and how I was going to want to structure things, and so it was amazing because sometimes it's a blessing to not know certain things, and I was just rolling on passion and adrenaline, and I had prepared for a long time, and that's one of the things I tell people. Is the lessons I learned as a player and a coach. Same thing in 1990, redshirt sophomore, hadn't played, come to practice on a Tuesday. I'm on the scout team, and next thing you know, they say, hey, Coach McCorvey wants to see you over on the offense field. And I'm like, oh, did I miss class? I don't know what happened. And I go over there, and on a Tuesday, and he goes, hey, I'm tired of all these guys. He goes, I'm going to give you a shot today. If you do well, you're playing on Saturday. I'd played in one game at that point in my career.
Wow.
And I went in, changed jerseys, and played that weekend, and went on, lettered 3 years, and never missed another game, earned a scholarship, the whole deal. And then fast forward, come to work, October,
right.
And hey, boom, here you go. The lessons I learned from that is you never know who's watching.
Yeah.
And so just be great. Just be great at whatever it is you're doing. Mm-hmm. Just be great. Just bloom where you're planted is what I always say. If you're the last GA, if you're this and that, be the best one. Whatever it is you're doing, and people will pay attention to that, and they will notice. By the quality of your work and the passion of your work. And then the next part is prepare for your opportunity.
Yeah.
You may not ever get it, but better be prepared without an opportunity than to not be prepared with one.
Right.
So 09 happens.
Yeah.
In that fall, how did those 7 weeks pan out?
Yeah. So 08, we're in 08 season.
Sorry.
So we go 4-2. So we lose the first week in a close game, controversial call at the end, terrible call I might add on a holding on my center, but it was magical. And we did a lot of things that week. How we dress, how we travel, how we practice, created the Tiger Walk, all in like 4 days. I'd never run down the hill. It was just and you could just feel. So then we had an open date, and then we go to Boston, and we win in an epic game, unbelievable fourth quarter win, and it was my first win ever as a coach, and you'd thought we won the national championship,
right.
But the team was coming together. But we go 4-2, we beat South Carolina, and we get the Gator Bowl. When we beat South Carolina, I pretty much knew I was going to get the job. And so I get the job. So 09, now I get a chance to actually have an off season and a spring and a summer and like most normal, and have a prep for a season. And it was amazing, and that team was awesome. I signed my first class February of 09, signed 12 guys, the Dandy Dozen is what I called them. 12 guys, and all 12 of them graduated, all 12 of them helped, kind of like the 12 disciples, if you will. So I tell our guys, they were the forefathers of our program. I got Taj Boyd to come, and the rest of them were just kind of guys. But all of them were so impactful in us building the culture of the program.
Yeah.
They helped me. And so I walk in the beginning in 09, so now it's January. I got my first team meeting and my first full staff meeting. I get the staff together the way I want it, and here we go. And I was like, we got to have here. Here's the vision of this is who we're going to be. Like as the leader, you got to be able to articulate.
How did you articulate that when you're talking to that first team, your first signees? How did you articulate that to them?
Well, it started with the staff. When I first got my staff together that late December, and I had everybody together, because they need to know, like, here's the vision of the program. Here's the core values. This is what we're going to be about. This is not what we do and how we do it, but most importantly, this is why we do what we do. And I need everybody to understand that. So then I kind of articulate that to the staff, and then I met with my seniors of that 09 team. And none of these guys came to Clemson for me to be their head coach.
Right.
And that's why I love that team of 08 and 09 and 10, because those guys didn't come here for me to be their head coach. But they bought in and they helped us start to build a culture and plant the seeds.
So here's something I want to ask you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but when you inherit these guys, or really they inherited you, what do you say to them to get them to buy in? What is it that you, I'm asking you specifically because I'm thinking about the guy who's sitting at home watching this on YouTube and he's going, I've just been promoted to sales manager, I've just been made executive VP, and all these people are looking at me. What is it that you say to them?
Yeah, well, that first team, the first team meeting in 08, October 13th at 4 o'clock that afternoon, because, we're going to have to practice. The coach is fired that day. It's all over the news, families, emotions, this and that. Now, the plus for me is I had a lot of great relationships already in place. So it's not like I just walked in off the street. And I was always intentional in my relationships, not just with the guys I coached, but guys I recruited, and that was something that Terry Don, I think, recognized. And so the guys were comfortable with me, but it was a very emotional thing. And so I literally, in that 4 o'clock meeting, it was just me and them. I didn't have anybody else in the room. And basically, I told them, I felt like it was important for them to know what the AD had told me. And that, hey, this is for the next 7 weeks, I'm going to be the head coach. And I just kind of, I laid out what the expectations were. And I said, I told them, I said, I know I don't have a very good shot at this job. I got like pocket nines, all right? But for the next 7 weeks, I'm all in. And I was like, and so here's what that means. And I said, it's about a commitment to being and doing your best in everything that you do. And it's about being excellent in everything that you do. And I was like, guys, we're going to do things differently for the next 7 weeks. We're going to travel differently. We're going to practice differently. We're going to meet differently. We're going to act differently. And I said, now listen, none of y'all came here for me to be your head coach. And I understand that. All right? We can't do anything about, we're 3-3. And 2 of those wins are against 1AA teams. And there's a lot of disappointment. We were preseason number 9. I said, we can't do anything about that. But we can start right now and we can change the ending. And you seniors, a lot of you guys are going to go on this and that. It doesn't have to end this way. And you have the opportunity to learn a valuable lesson in life. All right? Yeah, you're not going to win a national championship. You're not going to win the ACC. But you could help us turn this program back in the right direction. All right? And I don't have a great shot at the job. Okay? But I got a shot. And so here's the deal. We're going to practice at 6 o'clock. And I laid out kind of some of the expectations. And I said, if you don't want to do that, it's not a problem. All right? You can clean your locker out. Next guy will keep you. Your scholarship's good. There's no problem. No hard feelings. But if you show up to practice tonight, this is going to be the standard. And this is what everybody's going to be held accountable to. And we're going to have a team of accountability. We're going to be team. And I just kind of laid those things out. And they all showed up at 6 o'clock. And so we kind of started with that. That's where it started. And then with the staff, and then I've called that first group. When now you tie it in the middle, let it hang at both ends. You get a situation like that. You got your middle of the season, 7 weeks. It's not like you got an off season. It's not like I get a chance to go put my staff together. You kind of got what you got. And so now when we get the team set in January, I felt like it was important. Once I said, this is what we're going to be about. We're going to graduate our players. All right. I don't know how long I'm going to be the head coach, but we're going to graduate our players. We're going to have a program that equips these young people with tools for life, right? Real tools for life. We're going to make sure our guys have a great college experience, and then we're going to win. And everybody in here needs to understand it's in that order. And every decision we make, everything we do is about the players, and it's about making sure we're living out the vision of the program, period, the end. We're never going to put winning first. All right, we're going to serve their heart, not their talent. And I started laying these things out, and so then I get with the players and the seniors, and this is the first senior class of 2009, my first team, and it was C.J. Spiller and some of those guys, and I said, all right, I met with them in the room. I said, and I told them, here's the vision. This is what our football this is what we're going to be about, as long as I'm the head coach. And I said, and then here's our 5-team goals. We don't have many goals, guys, and I went through our goals. You know, we're going to win we want to win the opener. We want to win the division. We want to win the state championship. We want to win the ACC. We want to win the bowl game. That was kind of our. And I said but I was like, you know what? I said we're gonna. These are our team goals. Here's the vision of the program. We're going to graduate. You guys, we're going to create a Paul journey, what we call player relations, a player development, micro internships, all these things. We're going to develop a program that's going to challenge you, stretch you, grow you as a man, and help you transition from football before you ever transition from football. And we're going to have some fun doing it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to change college football. I mean, I said this, I said, we're going to build a program. We're going to build the model program in college football. And I told the guys, I said, guys, I told them things I didn't like, things I experienced as a player, things I experienced as a coach. And I was like, we're going to do it differently. And if it doesn't work, I can ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
But this is how we're going to do it. And so then I meet with those seniors and we sit in the room and I laid it all out for them. And I said, so here's what I need. I need some guiding principles a little bit, like some kind of bumpers, because I know we're going to get off track. So we need something, and I wanted to empower those guys a little bit. So we sat down, and we're like, okay. So we wrote the Clemson Commandments. There's 16 Clemson Commandments, and so we're like, and I said, here's where we're going to start, because y'all know the first thing is we're going to graduate our players. All right, we're going to do that, guys. We're going to go to class. We're going to graduate. So I said, so number one.
Did you get any pushback from that from any of those seniors?
No. I said, so the number one, they're all sitting in there. Number one Clemson Commandment. I put, go to class. Mm-hmm. Can't graduate if you don't go to class.
That's a fact.
And C.J. Spiller, I believe, was the one. He said, well, Coach, he said, we can go to class, but we could be asleep. We could have on our headphones. I went, you're right. We're going to go to class and be engaged. And then we just started writing these things, and next thing you know, we finished. And they've not, just so you know, nothing has changed since that 2009 team. Nothing.
That's incredible.
Not one Clemson Commandment. The only thing that changed on our team goals, instead of win the bowl game, I had to, after 15, because I always told them from day one, I said, hey, I know some of these things went down. I said, but if we ever achieve those things, we'll win it all.
Yeah.
And in the 15, we did. We won the bowl game, but they changed the rules on me. And we went to it was when the playoff game, and we went to the national championship and lost in that first national championship. So, and I came back and I took ownership. I told the staff and the team, I said, that's my fault. I said, every day y'all come in here and y'all have seen those goals. And I was like, win the bowl game. And I said, that's all my fault. I said, we're going to change it. And I said, forever I've said, if we hit all five, we'll win it all. So I changed it. Instead of win the bowl game, win the closer.
Yeah.
So win the opener, win the closer. And in 16, we hit all five and we won it all.
So within months, you've put together quite the plan.
Yep.
That you start to lay out, that you start to communicate.
But I had put that together for years.
It sounded like you had been
for
prepped.
years. I had been
that
working,
wasn't totally off the cuff.
I had been working since literally from the time I got in coaching in 1993 and knew that this was my calling and what I wanted to do. I started preparing to be a head coach.
Yeah.
Learning, writing things down. Ooh, don't like that, like that. Hey, if one day book, how would I do academics? How would I do discipline? Yeah. What would my staff look like? What would be my offensive, defensive specialty? How would I practice? What would be my recruiting philosophy or whatever? I started putting that together. And in fact, when I sat down, that Sunday after that South Carolina game in 2008, I had to go interview with the AD, and I went in there as if they had never met me. And I laid out, I gave them and I had worked on this thing late at night and different things just to put it together. Like, this is who I am, right? And this is what we're going to be. And I think that even though he would have hired me without that, I think it just kind of further solidified that, hey, we had a plan. We weren't flying by the seat of our pants.
You were prepared.
So you go in, obviously having to be the head of and the leader of all of this. Who do you go and try to get support, mentorship, leadership from to support you?
Yeah.
In this big step.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, the man upstairs.
Yeah.
And that week, so I get the job on a Monday as an interim. I don't sleep Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, it's just a blur. And oh, by the way, you got a game on Saturday. I mean, it was just, and it's Paul Johnson. He runs the triple option, and he's his first year in the league. I know nothing about the triple option. And it's just kind of overwhelming. So I'm coming in, it's Thursday morning, it's about 5:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and I'm coming into the parking lot in our old building over there. And the night before, I had moved into Tommy's office, because I was originally just going to stay in my office, but I realized I couldn't get anything done. It was just so I'd taken it late Wednesday night and put some boxes in his office and kind of just went back there, and he had a little door right off the parking lot there. And so that Thursday morning, and I was overwhelmed. I was tired, I was emotional, I was overwhelmed, I was fearful, and I just had prayed driving in that day, just for strength and just wisdom and courage, and I'll never forget, because I pull in the parking lot, and I'd never parked in the head coach's spot, right up there by his door. I'm like, but that night before, so I'm like, well, I'll move over. There's nobody in the parking lot, and I'll never forget. I'm turning in. I'd just been praying, and I'm worn out, and I pull into the parking spot, and my lights hit the curb, and I never even paid any attention to it before, but the curbs were numbered. There was a number on each curb, and my lights hit the parking spot, and it's 88 was the curb, and which was my college number. And I just remember just putting the car in park right there, and I just cried, and I was just, because it was like God just saying, hey, just trust me. Yeah. I got your back. And so, my number one person I go to for mentorship and guidance and strength and wisdom is God. Yeah. And then Coach Stallings was a great mentor to me. I spent 7 years with him in Alabama. I played for him, and obviously he was excited for me. And I'll never forget it when he called me in to offer me the job, and he's just like, hey, because I was looking for a job. I'd finished my master's, and he shuffled his staff, and he goes, hey, I need a young guy on my staff. Everybody's getting a little older. He goes, and hey, I know you'll do a good job for me. He goes, now I'm gonna pay you $38,000. That's way more than you're worth. he said, but I know you'll do a great job. And he goes, now I'm gonna hire you to coach my ends. He called them ends. So if you were a wideout or a tight end, you were an end. Yeah. So I'm coaching wideouts and tight ends at 26 years old, older staff. And at my alma mater, sure. He could have hired anybody, right, yeah. and he hires me, and that always resonated with me. And he was like, "Hey, look, man, you one of mine." And I watched you as a player. He doesn't hire me if I didn't do a great job for him as a player, as a GA, right. All these things. And I tell coaches that all the time, And I'm like, wow. So now I got this job, and so then I go on to work for him. Then he ends up retiring. But we've had a life. In fact, he's coming to town this week. We're doing a big thing Thursday night here in Clemson, a big fundraiser together. And he's just been an unbelievable mentor. He tells me the truth. Yeah. He's given me some really, really good advice at times when I needed it at some critical times. And he'll tell me exactly how he feels. And I don't always agree with him, but I can always count on he's going to be genuine and authentic. But after he was gone, and I got exposed to some other things, I learned way more from Coach Stallings after he was gone, because I didn't really know anything different.
That's what I was going to ask you. When you think back on your time with him, particularly when you were coaching with him, if you were going to boil down 2 or 3 things that were takeaways as far as how you run a program, mm-hmm. functionally. Yeah. Because I think the character and the way he believed in you, all those things are foundational, mm-hmm. and that's the bottom line, obviously. Yep. But functionally, what did you learn from him that you carry with you even now?
Yeah, so how he managed the staff was big. And I'll never forget it. It was late one night, and I'm in my office. I have my own office, and I got my office, and I'm in there, man, and I'm so fired up. It's spring ball, and I'm great. I've already graded all the practice tape, all this. I've gone through it. I've got all my notes. I'm ready. Yeah. I'm getting ready for the staff meeting the next day. I've gone through the one. I got my notes for next day's meetings, and I'm working on some recruiting stuff. I'm trying to go through some things. There's just always so much to do. And I'm just having a ball, and all of a sudden I feel this presence kind of in the door, and it's Coach Stallings, and I'm kind of excited about it because it's kind of late.
You're burning
I'm out. Everybody else is gone. Everybody else is gone, and I'm still up there working, and And I'm thinking, oh, this is good. You know, he's like, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, coach, man, I mean, you scare me. I'm like, oh, coach, I'm just getting ahead a little bit, doing some recruiting. I just wanted to be ready for the staff meeting in the morning. And, you know, just went back through the scale and I'm just going through this whole deal. And he's looking at me with a stone face. And he said, hey, let me tell you something. If I ever catch you up here like this again, I'll fire you. Really? He said, you got a bride? I went, yes, sir. He goes, hey, man, you need to get home to your bride. He said, if you can't get what we need to get done in the time I give you, hey, I need to get somebody else to do this job. So I don't care when you come in here. Hey, man, you need to go home. This is time for you to be with your bride. And it was like,
it throws you back.
Yeah, you know, but that stuck with me my entire life. He was very big on family, and not doing too much. And again, it goes back to keeping your priorities in order. And for me, it's just keeping my eyes on the Lord and seeking His direction, and my family, and football. And I just try not to compromise that, and having a good circle of people around you and circle of accountability around you that hold you accountable. But to answer your question, I almost got out of coaching in 2006. All right, I was at Clemson. I was an assistant. I was down in Florida, and I was really struggling. Oh man, I spoke in Macon, Georgia last night at a big FCA event, and I was just talking about this. It's fresh in my mind, but I was really struggling. I was in Jacksonville recruiting. I was on the road for about a month. May is a heavy recruiting time. And my oldest son, Will, was probably, 7 or something like that, 7 or 8. And then Drew, and then Clay was young. And I call home, and I'm on the phone with Kath, and Will had just hit a home run on his little T-ball game or whatever, and Drew's in, and it's just chaos at home. And I was missing so much stuff. And it was something I always promised myself, because, you know, my dad had to miss a lot for me growing up. And I just was like, you know, man, it was just bothering me. And I felt like I was sacrificing my family for my job. And I told Kath, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, I was just guilty and just convicted of that. So I come up with this big speech, and I get back home, and I line up Will, Drew, and Clay, and Kath was on board. Got them on the bed, little legs are hanging over the bed, they're all looking at me, and I told them, I said, listen, I just want y'all to know that y'all are the most important thing to me, and you know, Daddy can do a lot of things, and I've decided that I'm not gonna be a coach anymore. I'm gonna take another job, and I can be home. I'm gonna work. I can be home on the weekends. I can be home at night, and I'm gonna be able to coach your teams, and I'm not gonna. It's really bothering me that I'm missing all this stuff, and they're all looking at me going, you know, like they got 3 eyeballs or something, and so I get done with my big speech, and Will and Drew, they kind of take it, and they're like, but Daddy, if you don't coach, we don't get to meet the players. And if you don't coach, we don't get to come to practice and ride the bus and go to the bowl game. And and all of a sudden God used my children to convict me that, hey, I got you doing what you're called to do, and you need to trust that. And what he taught me, and what I learned from that is it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality of time. Yeah. There's a lot of people who have a lot of time, and they don't still spend the time. And I don't like to say spend time, it's invest time. Yeah. You know, so that just getting creative with the quality of time. And so I had a piece about it. And then when I became the head coach, well, then that was a game changer. Because the greatest part of my job is I get to set the philosophy, I get to set the tone, yeah. I get to turn the thermostat up or down, and I get to articulate what the expectations are. And for me, you know, I get to be the type of head coach, you know, to my assistants and mentor them, you know, because I know they struggle with the same things that I did. And so it's and that's, you don't see a lot of turnover here at Clemson. And that's why, because it is not something that we just talk about. We live it every day. It's a family atmosphere. Wives are involved, kids are involved. They're at practice every day. It's just a very inclusive place where everybody's involved, and it's a small town. And so we've been intentional. I said, okay, when your kid turns 9, they're on the sideline for home games. You know, I mean, like, kids could never be on the sideline, and so now all of a sudden I'm the head coach, and you know, I'm like, and so they've been on the sidelines their whole life. So just involving our kids, family night every Wednesday.
That way the family doesn't start to resent football and
They're
the team and the coach and everything. They get to be a part of it. You see that so many times in ministry, where the families who integrate ministry and family do much better. The families who, you know, and typically what happens is the wife resents the ministry, and so that gets passed down to the kids. Whereas if they're all engaged and involved in it, then there's no resentment.
And it's just, it becomes a support group. They're all together. And all these kids get together and they're playing with each other.
And they start to enjoy the stuff like the team buses and meeting the team and being on the sideline.
And they all know we got to grind. But so camp, when we do camp, you know, every meal, all through camp, all of our families come and eat they can eat every meal, kids, everybody. So
which is also great for the players.
It's great for
I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I mean, that's
I want
huge.
our players to see us as
they get a vision of what can be in their lives.
And it also makes you, as a coach, when your kids are around all the time, to be mindful of your actions, what you say. You know, is it aligning with what you're trying to teach at home?
Imagine that.
You know, and so it's just been, it's all intentional and it's all purposeful that way.
You said something a few minutes ago that I want to go back to that I think is really important. You said we're going to coach their hearts and not their talent. Talk about that, because I think that's a principle that is translatable to any arena in any field. Talk about that.
Well, we say we're going to serve their heart, not their talent. You know, we talk about servant leadership here, because there's a difference. And you know, there's got to be a chain of command. There's got to be leaders. But I look at it. We work together, and we all are on the same page. We start over every year. You know, we spend 5 days together as a staff, as if we just met. And I will go through the entire program, the A to Z of who we are, why we do it that way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to make sure that we're on the same page. We're always trying to reinvest, refocus, refuel, recharge, because we don't ever want to plateau, right, ever. And so we just challenge ourselves that way all the time. But the philosophy of the program, if you had to kind of, you know, one worder, is, hey, we're going to serve their heart, not their talent. And what that means is, first of all, you can't serve someone's heart if you don't have a relationship with them. This is a relationship-driven program. You know, we all know that there's results and things like that, and there's a process in place, but we're not result-driven, we're not process-driven, we're relationship-driven. And so to me, I hire people first, coaches second. I recruit people first, players second. There's a million good coaches that can come in here and draw up stuff and this and that. Good coaches who love their wives, who are very focused and passionate about impacting their young players' lives and equipping them and really love them and want to mold and mentor them in the positive way, that are more than a scoreboard, then the pool gets smaller. Same thing with players. There's a lot of great players, but great players that value education, that want structure, that want discipline, that want accountability, that want family, the pool gets smaller. And so we're very intentional that way, but when I say serve their heart, you got to know them. You got to know them. And then, you know, if they're not doing, if they're out smoking dope or skipping class or whatever, well, if you're serving their talent, you're going to play them because they can help you win. If you're serving their heart, you're going to discipline them. The greatest form of love is discipline. And a lot of people see Coach Swinney and we're having fun, with a good time, but these guys, they know this is not an easy place. This is a very tough place to be, all right? But what's encouraging to me and what's so awesome to me is there's a lot of incredibly talented young men out there that want discipline, that want structure. Because we're so transparent in the recruiting process. Well, I don't want anybody coming here going, whoa, man, they serious about this class stuff. You know, so I spend most of my time trying to talk people out of coming to Clemson. And so what's exciting, we've had 2 decommitments in 6 years.
unheard of.
We hardly offer anybody. We have some of the fewest offers. I mean, you have our peers will offer 400 kids. We'll offer 90. You know, we just don't offer many people, and our brand has grown. And then I don't offer freshmen and sophomores. You know, our brand has kind of grown that way, and people know who we are. And again, we're very transparent. So when a kid comes to Clemson, he knows what he's getting into, and he's been vetted. And the last step is Coach Swinney, and the coaches cringe every time it gets to me because they know I'm going to be brutally honest. We don't promise anybody anything. You're going to get what you earn. You're going to earn it through your effort, your accountability, doing what's right, nourishing the concept of team and family. And that's just the way it is. And then I talk to them about commitment. And if you don't want that, then let's just keep recruiting.
Don't come.
Don't come. And so that is how we've gone about our business. And so serving their heart, all right, it may cost you a game, but that's okay. Right. If you're, what do you stand for? What are you about? And you're either going to compromise, and so many people compromise. You know, they will say, hey, this is the way we're going to do it, and then they compromise. And then the lines get grayed and blurred, and now all of a sudden, so to me, it's the little things. Muhammad Ali said, it's not the mountains ahead that wear you out, it's the pebble in your shoe. Dadgum pebble in your shoe will wear you out. So that's why I'm always telling the staff, hey, that's a pebble in my shoe. It's the little things. And so, George Washington Carver, he said, if you do, and this was day one of building the program, this was the first slogan I put up, if you do the common things in an uncommon way, you will command the attention of the world. And this was in 2009. And I said, guys, we're going to build our program by doing the common things in an uncommon way. How we practice, how we clean the locker room. When we get off buses, is there any trash left on the bus? When we go to a movie on Friday night, is the movie theater. When we leave movie theaters, we have blowers, and we blow the theater out, and then we tell them thank you for letting us come to your movie, and we leave. But that's how we've built our program.
That's how you eliminate entitlement. That's how you
no
keep
entitlement.
All that stuff.
There's no entitlement.
Okay, I have to ask you a question. I just know enough, Dabo. I'm 53, and coming from a divorced home, and my dad passed away my last year of college. I had a very superficial relationship from the day he left till the day he died. He never reprimanded me. And forget me. I've just seen too many men, women, and other. I've seen too many people who had either an estranged or hard relationship with their dad who did not have the take that you have on authority and accountability and loving hearts, serving hearts. I would love to pick your brain a little bit on that, because I think there's so many people who are going to watch this who candidly are wounded.
Sure.
And they're leading out of that woundedness. Talk about how because you had a hard relationship with your dad.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't good, it wasn't great. You were very close to your mom. She went on staff at Alabama, I think, while you were playing there.
No. She just moved in with
me.
She
moved in with you.
Yeah.
So, I know you and your mom were very close. She moved, to Alabama, to Tuscaloosa when you were playing there. But talk about how you processed through that relationship with your dad to where it didn't become a hindrance.
Yeah, well, I think I just was talking about this at a group down in Georgia last night. I was an at-risk kid. If I was growing up today, I would be labeled. Today's world likes to label people.
Sure.
And I would be labeled at risk. Parents were married at 18, no education. Nobody in my family ever had a college degree. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, older brothers, nobody. And you just kind of went to work and, just blue-collar people and addiction in the home, violence in the home, divorced parents, literally homelessness in that, not that we were on the street, but when you're having to live at somebody else's place because you don't have a home, well, that's homeless. And that's kind of how it was for me, sleeping on the floor my senior year. But the game changer for me, and this is how I've lived my life and what I try to share with people, because how does this kid, I'm not supposed to be where I am based on all the dysfunction and things that I had to overcome. Poor relationship with my father, who's an alcoholic, and it's not good. And two things. One, I got saved when I was 16. a guy, just a youth football coach, leads me. He starts sowing seeds into me, starts an FCA program at my high school. I start going to the FCA program, start learning scripture, and some of the stories of the Bible start coming alive. We fellowship through music, and start talking and community. And I'd never really experienced that. I didn't have a relationship with Christ, and we'd go to church every now and then, and we believed in God, but I didn't know anything about a relationship. I didn't know what that meant. And so God put people in my life, and I submitted to that. I got saved, so that was number one. That was February 3rd, 1986, 34 years ago. Yeah. I met the Lord. And I went home that night, and I wrote in my Bible, I dedicated my life to the Lord. My life will never be the same. I signed it. And about every 5 or 6 years since, I've written a little passage. I just write an update, kind of where I am in there. And my life was complete chaos. In fact, at that point, it got worse. That's when my parents divorced. That's when we're on the run. But what happened is I had change inside. Yeah. And my circumstances didn't change, but I had a peace and a hope that I'd never had. And what God will do for you, what a relationship with Jesus will do, was it'll help you dream and think and believe beyond your circumstances. Yeah. And it'll give you a vision, even though it may not make sense. And that's kind of how it was for me. And I've kind of held on to Jeremiah 29:11 for a long time. For I know the plans I have for you. They're plans for good, not disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Like, hey, Dabo, I know the plans I have for you, buddy. Yep. And it doesn't look good, but they're plans for good, not disaster. And I, as a young person, kind of hung on to that. And what I tell people, what I've learned through my life, is if there's really hope in the future, then there's power in the present to deal with whatever you need to deal with. And that power comes from a relationship with Christ. And so that's where number one with me. The second thing is my coaches, my teachers. I had so many people. There's just random people out there and sometimes they think that they're insignificant and they don't matter, but everybody has a circle. And every day you have the opportunity to impact someone. And you may never know. You don't always get the fruit the day you plant the seed, right? And so, my coaches, their encouragement, people's belief, they knew what was going on with my life and the situation, and my coaches just kind of put their arms around me, and they created a work ethic in me and a toughness and a belief, and they made sure I had what I needed. And then I had a counselor that said, hey, you can go to Alabama. Here's this thing called a Pell Grant. I didn't know what a Pell Grant was. Hey, you can get a Pell Grant and you can get a student loan if you really want to go. This is how you can do it. And I'm like, really? Sign me up. And I'm like, let's go. And I move off to Tuscaloosa in the summer of '88. But I had a lot of dysfunction. I was mad. There was a little time, that I didn't want to, like anybody, I had the same emotions. But what I realized when I got to college was I was hurting myself. Forgiveness was an issue, and all that was damaging me. And I eventually got to the point where I just gave it all to God. And I just, and my dad slowly got better. Like he went from being drunk every day to he'd only drink on Tuesdays and Saturdays. He started applying discipline to his life. And so if it was a Tuesday or Saturday, I just didn't talk to him, but any other day, he'd be great. And I just gave it all to God, and I quit judging my dad, and I quit trying to be God. Because to me, I used to get so mad because I just wanted to fix it. I'm a fix-it guy, and I wanted to fix it. Just like, why do you do this? We don't, just, it doesn't have, and it just, but he had his own struggles. And eventually, I let all that go. And I just loved him anyway. And I forgave him. And then over time, our relationship changed. And the last 15 years of his life, we were best friends. Miss him every day. He met the Lord. He was saved. He was awesome. He quit drinking, quit smoking. Everybody loved my dad. My dad was a beautiful man, would give you the shirt off his back, and he had his little appliance business that people would come in there, and most of the time they didn't want anything, they just want to come talk to Ervil and get his input on something. But it's amazing to see that transformation. You couldn't have got my mom and dad in the same county. Now all of a sudden they're all in Clemson, South Carolina, staying in our house with their new spouses, and we're all one big happy family. Only God can do that.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, how I overcame that, it was my faith. If you don't have a spiritual foundation to your life, you're because nothing can fulfill you.
Right.
You know, you're going to chase. I don't care any amount of money. Sooner or later, it's just not going to fulfill you.
Yeah.
It's going to always come up empty. So my faith pushed me through and helped me to make. You know, Bible says my word is a lamp to your path, right? And when you think about a lamp, it's just enough light to just see, like you're laying beside the bed, right? He doesn't give us bright light for 5 or 10 years, thank God, right? But you know, I just kind of just kept moving and kept one step at a time. But the coaches in my life, the teachers, key people in the community that would come up and they could just almost read my mind. They'd be like, "Hey, man, you know, I had 28 points one night in the region tournament, and there ain't nobody there to see me, which was not unusual." And I had a guy in the community call me the next day, and he just said, "Hash, I want to tell you, man, you were awesome last night, and this and that, you know, and here's what, you know," but people speaking life into me, people encouraging, people painting a picture of what I could do, and so I was able to live that out and go to school and get my degree. And I never ever thought about coaching, ever. And so my goal was to be a pediatrician. I was a pre-med major for 3 years, biology major for 3 years. I'm going to be a pediatrician. And the reason I want to be a pediatrician is because the only doctor I knew till I was 25 years old was my pediatrician. I went to him when I was 25, Dr. Goldblatt, but he was always happy and he always made me feel better. and I knew he made a great living. And I'm like, I'm going to be a pediatrician. I'm going to make a great living. I like to work. And what's crazy is, and this was a struggle with me at Alabama, because when I made a decision going into my 4th year, I was like, this just isn't what I want to do. I wasn't passionate about it. I don't know how I'm going to go to school for 10 more years. And it was like I was giving up on my dream. And I tell my players this all the time. I was just telling them the other day, you know, God gives us, my dream was play in NFL, be a pediatrician, or play in the NBA. And God gives us these dreams. And sometimes it's not, but it's not like it's a false dream. Sometimes He gives us these dreams to put us to chase, so we'll chase that dream, and we'll be on the path that we need, so that He can equip us and put the right people on our path, so that ultimately we can find our purpose that He's created us for.
Don't you think a lot of times too, it's to expose you
Yes.
to ways of life
No
and to parts of the
question.
world that you never dreamed or imagined, that you never would have seen if you hadn't been on that path at
If
that
I
moment.
hadn't thought I could go play in the NFL, I don't have the guts and the courage to walk on at Alabama and to go through what I went through, because I had this belief, I had this dream, I had this, and I'm chasing. And eventually I'm like, I'm not good enough to play in the NFL, but man, it exposed me to all these things. And I'm still kind of a pediatrician. I work with young people, and I try to make them better.
You make
Most
it
of them
better,
are 25.
exactly.
That's what I do. Exactly. That's what I do. And but it's amazing to look at how God orchestrates things like that. And so, you know, for me, and so He equipped me. So then I become a coach. It just happened. Coach Stallings was like, "Hey, I need a GA. You start in July. You need a master's." You know, my last season there, and I didn't even want to do it, but I couldn't tell him no.
I love your Coach Stallings
Yeah,
invitation, by the way. When you hear that voice in the back of your head for so many years, you can't help but come out that way.
And so I get my master's. My first week as a GA, I'm like, this is what I'm called to do. It was like clarity of life. And so as I've dealt with young people over time, I've dealt with a lot of kids like me, a lot worse than me. And sometimes you may have a kid in your office and he's upset, you know, maybe made a bad decision or whatever. And I'm like, you know, and then they're like, "Coach, you don't understand." I'm like, no, whoa. No, I do understand. Here's what I know. Let's don't use all of that as excuses for your poor behavior.
Right.
Change is within. As a man thinketh, so is he. It's not as my dad thinketh, so am I. Right. As a man thinketh, so is he. So we got to change how you think, all right? If we're going to create the destiny that you deserve and can step into, we can't use these as excuses. We got to use those as reasons to change, to not do those things, to show up early, to whatever. And when you got to change how people think. And so for me, through faith and through other people, I just started to think differently. Life didn't really change. In fact, it was stunk, on the surface. But I just had a different attitude. Yeah. And I had a very clear vision. You know what? If I put the work in, if I do this, I get my education, I'm going to be able to overcome all of these obstacles. Yeah. And I was never like jealous of somebody else. This is God never says oops. This is the path He put me on. And He knows the hair on our head. So I don't really know why, but He does. And so having faith in that, and I've just kind of carried that with me forever.
So you've been on quite the path, quite the journey. A lot of milestones accomplished. And you've been prepared for a lot of it, pre-prepared, right? So when the doors are open, you're going. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? What are the next set of goals, milestones that Coach and Clemson want to achieve?
Yeah, well, for me, we just finished the transformative teens. Yeah. We transformed Clemson. Now we're into the roaring 20s and then the thrilling 30s. So hopefully I'll be around for the thrilling 30s. I don't know. And but the biggest thing for me is just staying true to my purpose, and that was a big thing for me this year. And my purpose, first and foremost, is to honor God in everything that I do, to be a great husband, to be a great father. That's number one. And then to use the game of football to shape and impact young people's lives in a powerful way that truly transforms them and equips them for life. So when I see them at 30, they're going to come hug my neck when they think a little bit differently. And then to stay focused on the purpose of this program, the why of our program. So that's really what I think about. I don't really sit around and say, okay, in 5 years I want to do this, in 10 years I want to do that. I'm just trying to be great today. Yeah. It doesn't do me really any good to think about what I'm going to do 5 years from now, because what if I'm not here in 5 years? I can have all the plans I want. My plan is to be great today. And I challenge our guys that all the time is, hey, someday, everybody talks about, hey, someday I'm going to graduate, someday I'm getting married, someday I'm this, someday I'm that. Well, in order for someday we just got to start stacking these todays. Yeah. And so I just want to be intentional with today. I want to stay committed to the purpose that I have in life, and I want to enjoy the journey. I think that, for me, it's always about what's next. If you walk in our team meeting every single day and for forever, it's just a huge windshield with a little rearview mirror, and it's got 9, 10 plus win seasons and that whatever's in the rearview mirror. It says today. Forgetting Philippians, right? Forgetting what is behind and fixing our eyes on what is next, right? And it's what's next, which is Monday practice. Let's be great today.
Thanks for checking out the Spur Leadership Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, and while you're at it, leave us a review or a comment. You can reach us by email at podcast@spurleadership.com, and you can also find us on Twitter at Spur Leadership or on Facebook at Spur Leadership. I'm Mac Richard, and this has been the Spur Leadership Podcast.